We gaan skypen met Donna Haraway. Zij is heel veel. Ze is een baanbrekende denker. Ze heeft geschreven over cyborgs. Over dat we eigenlijk zijn we allemaal al cyborgs. We hebben implantaten, we hebben gehoorapparaatjes. Dus eigenlijk herdenkt zij op een nieuwe manier over wat de mens is. Ze is ecofeministe, dus ze onderzoekt ook hoe we nou eigenlijk samenhangen met alle andere aardse wezens. Critters noemt ze dat, dus eigenlijk alles wat kruipt. Ze heeft een paar kernwoorden, die wil ik al even aan jullie introduceren. Kin, making kin, kinship. Dat gaat over verwantschap. Het gaat over verwantschap dat voorbij bloedbanden gaat. Dus kunnen we ook verwantschap creëren, maken, voeden met andere mensen die niet biologisch verwant zijn. Misschien ook met andere dieren, andere wezens, planten, dingen. Dus zij rekt ons verbeeldingschap een beetje op. En dat gaat ze vanavond ook doen. Ze heeft vorig jaar een boekje mede uitgegeven of mede geco-edit. En dat heet Making Kin, Not Population, Reconceiving Generations. En hier houdt ze een pleidooi dat we toch echt minder baby's moeten maken, maar andere vormen van verwantschap moeten ontdekken en gaan maken. Nou, daar gaat ze een pleidooi voor houden. We gaan eventjes met haar bellen. Het duurt ongeveer 7 minuten en dan dat ze een verhaal houdt en dan kunnen we haar vragen stellen. We gaan contact maken. Ze zit in Santa Cruz. Ja. Hello, Donna.
Hello.
Professor, I'm sorry to introduce you so informally.
That's good.
Here we are with about 100 people, and we are very excited to have you with us today. And we would like to invite you to speak about what does it mean to make kin, and why should we make kin and not population. I give the virtual floor to you. Please.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate that people are willing to listen to a Skype with some kind of weird electronic person speaking from heaven only knows where, but it's Santa Cruz, California, and it's a beautiful day. So my slogan is make kin, not babies. And I've gotten into a lot of trouble with this slogan. It goes along with a pair, making kin, not population, making family, making the love of place and of a multi-species, multi-kinded kin of humans and plants and animals and microbes and places, while with multi-species environmental and reproductive justice as the means and not just the goal, we over a period of time reduce the kind of damage that the supernumbering of human beings and the superconsumption of human beings is doing to this planet. In my own story, I belong to a kin group that has been trying to make kin with connection to many generations, including babies and the young, the old, each other, in a multi-species way over a period of many decades. My partner, my husband, Rustin, got a vasectomy, had himself sterilized as soon as it was legal when he was 21 years old. We're both in our 70s now. And for Rustin, that action was very much an act of love for the earth, for the human beings and plants and animals and microbes and places of the earth that were subject to a kind of extraction and superconsumption, especially by the rich. In my own lifetime, the population of Earth was about 2 to 2.3 billion people when I was born in 1944. And if I get my due from the life insurance tables and die when I'm supposed to, the population of the Earth will be about 8.5 billion human beings. That's over a 3.5 times increase in one rich white woman's lifetime. What happened to release the numbers on the Earth, and why, especially after World War II? Why and how has this great release happened of numbers? And why is this great release accompanied by such extraordinary inequality, racism, misogyny, anti-migrant action, injustice on a multi-species level? And how might it be brought into a kind of greater peace, a kind of greater multi-species justice? Well, I have been a feminist my entire adult life. And one of the things that I had to notice over the last decades is that in progressive, anti-racist feminism, it has been almost impossible to talk about the burden of human numbers because of the burden of racism in Malthusian approaches to the question of human population. A Malthusian approach has traditionally, since the late 18th century through to now, looked at the imbalance and disproportion between the rate of increase of resources and the rate of increase of human beings. It has been a kind of counting of human beings that has located what gets called overpopulation, particularly in the poorest areas of the world and in the non-white areas of the world. It has emphasized the reproductive rates of non-white peoples and in a sense given a pass to the reproductive rates of the wealthy regions, areas, and populations of the world because their reproductive rates have fallen often below replacement rate. So from a Malthusian point of view, the rich areas of the world, Singapore, the Netherlands, Denmark, the white areas of the United States, Japan, Taiwan, so forth, consider themselves to be in the grip of a low fertility crisis where state actions, pronatalist state actions to increase the reproductive rate of the so-called desirable populations, even while a so-called migration crisis and the effort to limit the migrations of the poorer of those great migratory populations pushed out by climate crisis and by war has been going on at the same time. So, for example, the notion of a low fertility crisis is a kind of scandal because there is no low fertility crisis. There has been an achievement of reproductive rates that are great, of human beings, that are greatly less than they have been. And that achievement needs to be celebrated and combined with a just migration policy, a just labor policy, a just policy of food and the distribution of food and the raising of food, so that the rapidly increasing global middle classes who are committed to increased meat eating, instead the politics of decreased meat eating and increased agricultural justice needs to be the policies that we are part of. So if you look at the world projections right now, if human reproductive rates continue to fall as they have been almost everywhere, except in the most extracted, permanent war, oppressed areas of the world where reproductive rates continue to be high, partly because human beings don't have the kind of contraception that they really want to use, but are still subject to population control policies that de-emphasize women's control of our own bodies with the kinds of contraception people really want to use and can use, but instead emphasize long-term measures that are not in the hands of the people who need to control our own families, reproductive rates, communities. Well, if we look at reproductive rates globally, if they continue to fall as they have been almost everywhere, by the year 2050, the population of the planet of human beings will be about 8.6 billion people. That is about 1 billion more people than are alive right this minute. By 2100, if reproductive rates continue to fall, the population of Earth, of human beings, will be about 11.2 billion persons. That is to say, almost 4 billion more people than are alive now in 2019. If reproductive rates do not continue to fall, but remain what they are right now, the population of Earth will be about 20 billion human beings. Clearly impossible. Well, clearly what it would take, the kinds of multiple crises that means in agriculture, in multi-species well-being, in communities, in migration related to climate change, in all sorts of areas of life, the immiseration of the planet would be completely impossible. Now, it's probably not possible to reduce the population of this planet much below 11 billion by the end of this century, no matter what people do, but it is possible to join in a kind of multi-species alliance to make a kind of multi-species flourishing more possible. Now, it is well known, but not taught in the schools, that if people in the rich areas of the world like ourselves want to reduce our impact on the planet, having one fewer baby in the families that people have, going from 2 to 1, going from 1 to 0, the reduction by one baby has a much greater, about a 10 times greater impact on the planet than anything else people can do, reducing meat eating, not driving a car, all of the things that people can do to address issues of climate change and the injustice of climate change are important. But what would have the greatest impact by far is reducing by one child one's own reproductive activities. Now, despite the fact that this is well known and the data are very strong, and it's not controversial among the folks who are studying this, it is not taught in school. It is not popular knowledge. The rich people tend still to this day to think that the problem of reproductive surplus is among those folks who might be having 3, 4, 5, 6 children in super poor areas, but that's not true. The greatest reproductive surplus on the planet is the result of the practices of the wealthy, including the growing global middle class, which will reach billions in the very near future. So what is to be done? Several things. One, I want to propose that we misstate the reason that the population of human beings is so out of proportion to the well-being of a multi-species, multiracial flourishing. We tend to look to what Malthusian ways of talking about things and compare the rate of growth of resources to the rate of growth of people, and then talk about the kinds of rates of increase of these matters. And I want to propose that we need to go back much further in time to the beginnings of what one would call the Capitalocene, the origins of capitalism, but even more importantly, the origins of the plantation and its slave economies that were the model for industrial capitalism, and look at the ways the Plantationocene, which is still with us today in our modes of agriculture, palm oil plantations, monocropping of wheat, rice, corn, and other crops, that the plantation is a contemporary project, not just an old one. And there are several important things that characterize the plantation. One, a radical simplification of ecological complexity, a radical reduction of the kinds of plants, animals, humans, microbes growing in an area, a radical simplification, a radical reduction, a removal of the current kinds of organisms, including the labor force, and a moving in of another labor force. The history of slavery is probably the most important example, but watch the labor forces around the world are displaced in order to produce labor forces that can be extracted and exploited in really intense ways. And look at the ways the history of labor movements and community movements have attempted to produce a kind of stability in place of labor that has a stake in place. So the history of the Plantationocene has been radical ecological simplification, substitution, and the breaking of ties to place, the breaking of the capacity to love and to love place. So that perhaps one of the most important things we can do if we're really interested in multi-species, reproductive, and environmental justice is learn to cultivate in practice multiple kinds of love of place, including making kin, not babies, especially by the growing global middle classes. I think I'll let that stand as an introduction and then join in the conversation with everybody else.
Thank you so much, Donna. Sorry, Professor Haraway. No.
Please.
Can you see me here on the camera?
I can.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you so much for your whole systemic analysis. So we started the evening with some dilemmas we feel like whether to have a child or not, and you showed us that it has to do with really like economic restructuring, redistributional, yeah, justice, labor. I'm wondering because is it also about like sacrificing something? Is it do you feel it is our duty as the privileged white upper class Western world to give up something, give up this idea of getting your own child? Is it our duty to sacrifice that?
I think sacrifice is a bad model. And I think that the question that grows in me is what happened to stimulate the great release of numbers, the great release of pathogens, the great release of an imbalance of the numbers of human beings, the great release of our industrial food animals, our industrial food crops, and the great decrease of other critters on this planet. What caused this great release of these numbers? Is there an innate need of populations, communities, individuals to have one's own child? Or is this a provoked and manufactured need that is not in our interests? I don't
like an idea that is like a narrative that is being reproduced, and that we like a desire that is imposed on us.
Well, or stimulated in us. I don't think there is a great need to have one's own baby, and that one then has to do this great secular Christian sacrifice of not having a baby, and that then one can't have a family, and one can't be with the young or with children or with babies. Instead, I think we need to cultivate love, including the love, I have babies, they aren't of my own body. I have been involved with the raising of young, including an extended family with children in it. I think we need to build multi-generational architectures. We need to join with each other in raising children for people who want to do that. I think we need to welcome those who are born and make a truly pro-child world that we don't the Netherlands, more than the United States, actually has more decent programs for the nurturing of the young, better family policies, better schools. But I think we need to improve and make this world truly pro-child, including very much for the children of migrants. I don't think it's a question of sacrifice. I think it's a question of a kind of joining with each other in the joy of making kin in a way that feeds each other and feeds the earth. It's not sacrifice.
Thank you. I'm just curious here in the room, are there already some questions or people who want to comment on this? I see some hands, so I'm just going into the room. Please, can you? Yeah. Maybe you can stand up.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, Professor, or good morning. I don't know what time it is at your end of the world.
Almost noon, 11:30 in the morning.
Okay, time for lunch. When we are living in a democratic system, and here in Holland, I've looked through the party programs, and none of the Dutch political parties has anything about a reducing number of people in it. I think the only party that says something about it is the Party for the Animals, but they say that we can actually solve this matter by eating less meat.
What's your question?
My question is that is the democratic system a system that can put the question of reducing people in the how do you call it, the political forum, or is that impossible through this system?
It's not impossible. Democratic systems have been able to put the project of increasing human numbers into their explicit politics. And indeed, today, nation states all over the world are talking about increasing the birth rate of citizens, even while shutting out migrants as much as possible. I think it is necessary for progressive people to speak about the need to rebalance human numbers on this earth with other organisms and with each other. I think that a democratic system is exactly the system that can begin to develop party programs, can begin to develop public fora like the one we're in right now, that can begin to talk in progressive ways that emphasize reproductive justice, anti-racism, a kind of flourishing communities that we can and must build into democratic platforms, questions of population. And we don't do so, I think, because we have turned the issue over to one, the professionals, and two, the racists.
The racists?
So that racist population programs are on party platforms everywhere.
Okay, maybe can you elaborate a bit more on that racist part? So how does this relate with racism?
Yes. For example, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan in the United States, simultaneously said in a speech that, quote, "We have too few babies. People must start having more babies." He meant middle-class, wealthy people. At the same time, he was refusing immigration reform, refusing to recognize that in substantial ways the growth in the young workforce in the United States is now and has been for a long time a workforce that is contributed to by migration, both legal and illegal. He wanted more white babies. I think that all over Europe, the pronatalist policies emphasize having increasing the reproductive rate of citizens, even while being seriously worried about the impact on populations of migrants.
Yeah.
And it's not just in Europe. Taiwan is a very interesting example of this. Singapore, Japan, and even the lifting the one-child policy in China. That's because of a perceived low fertility crisis. It's explicitly in the politics. And I think people like us need to explicitly build into the politics, no, low fertility is a great achievement. Let's figure out how to make this a peaceful process of care and justice across both human beings, plants, animals, and places.
So we should reframe our thinking on population and low fertility rates.
We should leap into the arguments and not be afraid of talking about population in progressive, non-Malthusian ways.
Yeah, yeah. Is there one more question here in the room? Yeah, I will come to you, sir. Can you please stand up?
Good morning, Professor. I was wondering, one way to look at this matter of how many children you have is like the humanistic or the political way. Another one is the biological way. And in my idea, for example, to reproduce is not something in which political parties are important, but our genes and our, like all living beings on this world, is a sort of biological automatism. And
what's your question?
Well, my question is, I'm sure you have thought of this, or you had more questions about this. But is it possible to influence it, especially when there is not so much wealth, and in those countries you have automatically more children because it makes the chance that your children survive smaller?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think population numbers, in fact, rates, have been greatly influenced by policy, which is one of the reasons that the rich areas of the world are worried about a low fertility crisis, namely women and men, but especially women, choose not to have a great number of babies. And as I think very few people realize, most areas of the world, including, for example, India, the actual reproduction rate is very close to replacement rate. There has been a tremendous fall in the decision to have so many babies. And the decision to have lots of babies is often a direct result of dispossession from land, tax policies, inheritance policies, of the breaking of the patterns of the balancing out of babies and life practices by systems of exploitation, including labor systems. I'm interested in the way the release from relatively stable control of human numbers, the great release by practices of exploitation built into capitalism, plantation agriculture. I think that some people have an extremely strong urge to have a baby, that this varies tremendously across groups of people. I think there's nothing wrong with if one finds oneself to be one of those people who greatly desires a baby, have a baby. But I think that urge is highly variable across the population, and that we need to support each other in these matters and not pretend that there is a kind of automatism or built-in biological need to somehow have large numbers of babies. There may be a very strong need among people to be in touch with the generations, the very young, the adults, the aged. I think we may very well have an incredibly strong social desire to be in touch with babies. That's not the same thing as my own body driving me to have a baby. I don't think evolution works that way in other animals or in us.
Thank you so much. Could you give us one question to ponder on this evening while we are reflecting on our own lives? So, what do you want? Like, how can we explore this, this need or desire or this absence of desire?
Well, the question I have is how to approach this matter with flourishing and joy and mutual support and real caring, as and not out of, oh my God, I can't eat meat and I can't have a baby and I really need to not drive my car and I need to be really nasty to everybody else who's not doing it right. I think that when we work that way, we are self-defeating.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us. Give us a big applause. It is very strange to say goodbye right now and to push on a button and to leave you away. I really wish you could speak Dutch, or that we speak. Well, we could also. We will send you a summary of the evening, and thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, so I am going to hit the hang up button. Right?
Yes.
And I will disappear. Hey, bye, guys.
Yes, we will all wave to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.